Arman Shanmugaratnam. A bombshell first public hearing of the so-called House Quad Committee today. The committee brought out a surprise witness, Jimmy Guban, a former Customs Intelligence officer who had been testifying about the drug problem even during the time of former President Rodrigo Duterte.
This time around, Guban testified that 3 people close to Duterte, namely his son, Representative Paulo Pulong Duterte, his son-in-law, Attorney Mans Carpio, and his former economic advisor, Michael Yang, were behind a drug smuggling incident worth billions of pesos 6 years ago. Marian Enriquez with the details.
Kami po ang nanghuli. Ano po ang partikular na batas? Ang ibabayolate ko? Conspiracy to import? Or yun ang grand conspiracy na linisin ang pangalan ng First Family at si Michael Yang?
That's only one of the allegations of former Customs Intelligence Officer Jimmy Guban as he faced the House Quad Committee's maiden session in Pampanga. Lawmakers are investigating the connection among POGOs, illegal drugs, Chinese drug syndicates, and extrajudicial killings. Guban linked 3 big names to the 6.8 billion shabu shipment smuggled in 2018. Guban said he knows the details of the botched shipment since he was part of the group that intercepted the smuggled drugs concealed in magnetic lifters. Both the House of Representatives and the Senate investigated the incident, which resulted in Guban's eventual arrest and detention. When he was at the Senate's facility, Guban claimed that a certain Paul Gutierrez threatened him.
Tuloy-tuloy po akong dinodoro. Jimmy, pag binanggit mo ang pangalan na to, pag binanggit mo to, mamamatay ka. Lalo na kung makarating ka sa Pasay City Jail. Di tatagal ang buhay mo. The worst, Your Honor, sinabay niya pa pati anak ko. Alam namin kung nasaan yung anak mo sa Makati. Madali kidnapin yan. Your Honors, alam niyo po ba kung sino yung mga tao na ayaw niyang ipabanggit? Si Pulong, si Mans, si Michael Yang, at ang sabi niya pa, mga kaibigan niya ni Benny Antiporda, magkakasama yan, hindi mo ba iisang pamilya yan, palagi yan sa Malacanang.
Benny Antiporda was a former Environment Undersecretary. He has vehemently denied Guban's claims.
Kasi we all know na nakakulong nga siya at gusto niyang ma-save siya sa pagkakakulong niya. Gawin niya ng paraan na tama, wag na siyang nandamay ng taong walang kasalanan.
Davao City Congressman Pulong Duterte has also dismissed Guban's testimony. In a statement, he said that he does not know the former customs officer and has no reason to threaten him. Duterte added that Guban has no credibility, having already been cited in contempt by the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee. Pulong also wondered why Guban is now the Quad Committee's so-called star witness. For his part, journalist and now Presidential Task Force on Media Security Undersecretary Paul Gutierrez said he has never met Guban, any of Duterte's, Attorney Mans Carpio or Michael Yang. He said he's just a quote, lowly reporter and was not in any position back in 2018 to make any threats. He also called Guban an inveterate liar. Guban has admitted that he has not met any of the 3 personalities he's tagging in drug smuggling.
Si Michael Yang ba, nagkaroon ba ng pagkakataon na magkaharap kayo?
Hindi po, Your Honor, nag-deny.
Nagkaroon ba ng pagkakataon na makaharap mo si Attorney Carpio?
No, Your Honor.
Nagkaroon ba ng pagkakataon na makaharap mo si Pulong Duterte?
No, Your Honor. In fact, hindi ko gusto nila ako kasi noon i-promote pero dininay ko na tama na ako kayo na
Ngayon,
tayo ang magkakausap.
Guban also recanted a testimony linking anti-drug police officer Eduardo Asierto to be behind the drug shipment. Asierto has also insisted in the past that Michael Yang is a drug lord. This recantation has left some lawmakers skeptical.
Paano kami maniniwala sa'yo?
Your Honor, yung katotohanan po ngayon ay inilabas ko dahil tinatakot ako nila during that time. Marami pong nangyayari during that time. Marami pong namamatay. Ngayon po, ang tamang panahon, inantay ko po, Your Honor.
For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
Okay, let's move on over to the Senate, where the case of Alice Go is also far from over. The camp of the former Bamban Tarlac mayor asked the Department of Justice to dismiss the human trafficking charges against her, calling them baseless. Camille Samonte with the story.
After being removed from office by the Ombudsman, Alice Go still faces several other cases. But earlier today, Go's lawyers filed a motion with the DOJ to dismiss the qualified human trafficking complaint filed by the PAOK and the PNP-CIDG. This is in connection with the raided Pogo Hub in Bamban. According to Go's counter-affidavit submitted to the DOJ today, the complainants failed to prove her involvement in human trafficking. She claims that the only basis for implicating her is the fact that her name appears on the electric bill and other documents of Baofu Corporation, the company that established the Pogo Hub. Go had said in an earlier Senate hearing that she had long sold her shares in Baofu before she even became mayor. She added that there is also no basis for the allegation that she was aware of the illegal activities at the Pogo Hub in Bamban. Attached to Go's counter-affidavit was her motion requesting the reopening of the investigation. It is worth noting that Go failed to appear twice at the DOJ's preliminary investigation, which began on July 6. The deadline for submitting her counter-affidavit also passed on August 6. According to the DOJ, the prosecution panel will decide whether to accept Go's counter-affidavit. The former mayor should have personally appeared before the prosecutor when submitting her counter-affidavit. Instead, Go simply went to a notary public and took an oath there to submit her counter-affidavit.
Ngunit tayo naman, ibibigay ko na lang sa prosecution panel yan kung tatanggapin ba nila o hindi ang counter affidavit ni Mayor Guo. Under special circumstances talaga pagbibigyan yan. Pero general rule, hindi talaga dapat.
The DOJ also ordered the NBI to verify the notary office in San Jose del Monte, Bulacan that Go visited.
It was sworn before a notary public. Hanapin yung notaryo at alamin kung humarap talaga sa kanya si Mayor Guo. Kasi baka gawa-gawa lang. Sana hindi, no? Pero posible din yun.
Earlier today, Dennis Cunanan, who is also involved in the qualified human trafficking complaint, visited the DOJ. He is the representative of the raided Zun Yuan Technology Pogo in Bamban. Cunanan was granted an extension by the panel prosecutor to file his counter-affidavit. The PNP-CIDG and PAOK likewise requested an extension to submit their reply affidavit regarding the documents submitted by Go and Cunanan. The preliminary investigation will resume on August 27. For News 5, Camille Samonte, we are One News.
Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa is another person determined to exhaust legal remedies in case the International Criminal Court issues an arrest warrant for him. The first PNP chief of the Duterte administration insists that he's not worried at all, but he will seek help from the Supreme Court. The ICC warrant will need to be served by Philippine law enforcement agencies. But what if the Interpol serves it on behalf of the ICC? The senator says that also requires coordination between member countries, and that's not so simple. Aside from the High Court, De La Rosa is also counting on his colleagues at the Senate and the Filipino people to stand with him in case he is apprehended.
We will seek for clarificatory relief from the Supreme Court. And Supreme Court ruling will be binding to everyone. So hindi man kami pwedeng mag-seek ng clarificatory relief before the issuance of warrant, kasi wala ring ika-clarify ang Supreme Court kung walang warrant na lumabas. So hintayin natin maglabas ng warrant just in case talagang gusto nilang i-implement, no? Sabi nga nila through the Interpol, ang Interpol mag-coordinate sa PNP or sa NBI, just in case their tendency is towards serving the warrant of arrest, then they have to be restrained by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court should decide first. As I have said, kini-question natin yung jurisdiction ng ICC over the Philippine jurisdiction.
In foreign affairs, President Marcos said the visit of Singapore's President Tharman Shanmugaratnam was a rekindling of personal ties and shows the strong bond between Filipinos and Singaporeans. Shanmugaratnam is here for a 3-day official visit, which kicked off yesterday with bilateral talks with President Marcos at Malacanang. They signed 2 MOUs, the first on the recruitment of Filipino healthcare workers and the second on collaboration on climate financing. And yes, the South China Sea was brought up, with both agreeing the issue is of great importance to both countries. Singapore's president also called for the rule of law to be upheld.
Aside from bilateral issues, we also discussed regional issues of mutual interest. As geographical neighbors in Southeast Asia, the South China Sea, West Philippine Sea holds great importance to both our countries.
The South China Sea is an extremely important issue. Singapore's position, of course, is well known. We've consistently upheld the rights of all states to freedom of navigation and overflight, and strongly supported the peaceful resolution of disputes in accordance with international law, including the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. That's fundamental. UNCLOS has to be the legal framework within which all activities in the oceans and seas are carried out.
Last year, the country's total trade with Singapore stood at $10.6 billion, with $3.5 billion in exports. That makes Singapore the Philippines' eighth largest trading partner. Also in 2023, approved investments from Singapore reached $674.4 million. There are approximately 200,000 Filipinos living and working in the city-state.
All right, staying with the South China Sea, or how we call it, the West Philippine Sea. Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson for the West Philippine Sea, Commodore J. Tariela, says that the ship that China sent to replace the so-called monster ship in Escoda or Sabina Shoal is also closely monitoring the activities of the Philippine Coast Guard.
Gaya ng ginawa ng China Coast Guard 5901, no? Ang China Coast Guard 5303 na pumalit sa 5901 ay nagmamatsyag pa din sa activity ng ating Coast Guard vessel. While at the same time, ito nga yung sinasabi ko, no? Ang China Coast Guard 5303 ay isang recognized sana na ni-register ng China to be part, no, ng isang na mag-conduct ng law enforcement to combat IUUF, no?
Experts say that the so-called monster ship with hull number 5901 was likely only refueling and will return to the shoal at some point. It is known as the largest Coast Guard vessel in the world at 165 meters long and was in the vicinity of Sabina Shoal for 38 days. In response, the PCG's BRP Teresa Magbanua has been deployed there since April. Chinese state media Global Times recently accused the Philippines of building a, quote, forward deployment base off of Sabina Shoal, which Tariela called absurd.
Nakakatawa nga yung mga statement ng ganyan ng People's Republic of China. Pag tayo nag-deploy ng barko, pinagdududahan na nila tayo na mag-i-station tayo ng barko. Samantalang yung pinakamalaking barko nila, na China Coast Guard 5901, at ang napakaraming Chinese maritime militia, we are documenting it that they are illegally swarming our own exclusive economic zone. At hindi naman natin sila pinaparapangan na magtatayo sila ng mga forward bases na sinasabi nilang ganyan, no? Considering that they are the ones deploying their vessels illegally and unlawfully in violation of UNCLOS.
We're going to pause for a quick break for now. Right after that, a chat with Senator Win Gatchalian, who says that the DepEd's Learning Recovery Program is in dire need of reform. We'll also get updates on the Senate's case against Alice Go. Stay tuned for that.
We caught up with grade 1 teacher Crescencia Lacatan during recess at Palatio Elementary School in Pasig earlier today. She only has morning classes from 7 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. In just 5.5 hours, she has to fit 7 subjects into her teaching schedule for the children. This is in addition to an hour of remediation or review of subjects that need extra attention. All of this is part of the pilot implementation of the new Matatag curriculum by the Education Department. Here, the focus will be on reading, math, and what is called GMRC or Good Manners and Right Conduct for students from kinder to grade 10. But for this school year, the pilot implementation only includes kinder, grade 1, grade 4, and grade 7. And while the program's goals are said to be good for teacher Crescencia, it has resulted in longer class hours for the children.
Nakakapagod po. Kasi mahaba po yung oras eh. Last year po, until 11 lang po ang klase namin, ng first grading. Kasi yun sa bata, restless na kasi sila eh. Sobrang haba na nung oras na ginugol nila.
Grade 4 teacher Jeline is also struggling. Previously, she mainly taught English, but now she also has to handle Filipino and math, which she is not as familiar with.
Pag uwi ng bahay, bagsak ka na talaga. Parang gusto mo nang matulog agad. Pero hindi pa rin pwede kasi kailangan prepare the next day po yung ile-lesson.
According to the school principal, some teachers are becoming ill due to exhaustion.
Siyempre, ini-embrace naman ng mga teachers ang changes. Pero siyempre, yung iba, nagko-complain din na pagod, lalo na yung 8 hours na straight teaching, talagang mawawalan ng boses.
The Alliance of Concerned Teachers has emphasized that the Matatag curriculum will not be effective if there are still insufficient teachers in the country.
Kulang talaga yung teachers, kaya kahit hindi ka math major, talagang ituturo mo. Nadidipit yung purpose. Kasi ang purpose nga po talaga tutukan itong mga makakalagang subject na ito.
Yesterday, the group expressed their dissatisfaction to DepEd. The group is hoping that DepEd Secretary Sonny Angara, who promised to review the new curriculum, will take action on this issue. For his part, Angara has said that the Matatag curriculum will be amended based on the feedback from teachers and students on what needs to be changed and what can be improved. For News 5, Ria Fernandez, We Are One News.
Indeed, what can be improved? Let's discuss this matter further with Senator Win Gatchalian. He's the chairman of the Senate Committee on Basic Education. Thank you for joining us. Good evening, Senator.
Good evening, and good evening to our televiewers.
Senator, let me take off from that last story we ran. Implementation of the Matatag curriculum seems to be problematic based on the case studies that we have spoken to. What needs to happen here, do you think?
Well, generally, I saw a review by PIDS on the Matatag curriculum. During the last school year, it was pilot tested. And based on the review of the pilot test, it seems like majority of our teachers and our school heads are in favor of the Matatag curriculum because it reduced competencies by 70% and increased the number of hours for students to learn and for students to absorb the lessons. It's important also for students to master the lesson. So this year, the Matatag curriculum is fully rolled out in kindergarten, grades 1, grades 4, and grade 7. And based on the department order and also from feedback from the implementers, our teachers and our principals, there seems to be the Matatag curriculum seems to have a lot of subjects being taught every day. I'll give you a case in point like GMRC. GMRC is now a law and it's mandated to be part of the lessons. However, it's being taught every day. And we actually urge the Department of Education to take a look whether GMRC can be taught maybe in lesser days, let's say 3 times a day. And the other lessons like Araling Panlipunan can be taught in lesser days instead of every day.
Okay, so in short,
what's
Senator,
important is more time for students to learn and more time for teachers to teach and for students to master the lessons.
Okay. So in short, what you're trying to say, and based on what you've heard and all the feedback, as well as the studies and the pilot test, sa madaling salita, kailangan pang i-further refine yung matatag curriculum.
I think the pilot test, the pilot test during this last school year enabled DepEd to fine-tune the matatag curriculum because it's fully rolled out in 4 grade levels. However, still based on feedback, still based on the department order that was released recently, there seems to be room for adjustment, especially on subjects.
Okay, you also said, and this quote of yours was carried by a lot of news outlets, the NLRP, the National Learning Recovery Program, that is yung panghabol ng mga estudyante after the COVID pandemic. You said it needs massive reform. Can you tell us what you've seen not go right with the NLRP?
The National Learning Recovery Program was intended to help our students who suffered during the pandemic. Learning loss is real. And in fact, during the learning, when World Bank conducted a survey on learning poverty, meaning literacy rates of our students, they discovered that 90% of our age 10 students cannot read a simple story. And that is quite alarming. So after the pandemic, the Department of Education launched the National Learning Recovery Program. But we discovered a lot of problems in the implementation of the National Learning Recovery Program. For example, those who need it the most are not acquiring it because it's voluntary. And the assessment prior to the National Learning Recovery Program imposed are not released to teachers. So in other words, teachers don't have any idea which student needed the most and if the students improve after the learning recovery program. And at the same time, it's not targeting students who really need intervention. Almost 60% of the students who participated in this program are the ones who are already advanced in their class.
Okay, so
And actually, one of the findings as well is that there's serious discrepancies between the actual competencies required of a grade level and the content that's being taught. How do we fix that?
Well, that's a really a big problem because we discovered in the National Learning Recovery Program for intervention, meaning students who need intervention, for students who are supposedly in grade 7, grade 8, are being taught with simple math. And after this program, after this intervention program, they will go back to the regular school. But in the regular school, they will not be taught simple math. It will be much more complex than that, like trigonometry or quadratic equations. So obviously the student will really have a hard time catching up because the subjects are very complex. So there needs to be another intervention program, an after-school intervention program for that particular student, and that's something that we are going to roll out through a new law called the ARAL program, and the ARAL program calls for a national tutoring program for students who need intervention.
Okay, Senator Gatchalian, we know you're also a co-chair of EDCOM2, the Education Commission, the second Education Commission. I also read that your first-year report is out. What are the pertinent points that came out there, yung issues that we really need to observe? Because we have been talking about this for a few minutes now, and it's so tangled, buhol-buhol siya. Where do we really start? And can we really...
Two things. No? The report basically, one of the most important outputs of the report is basically saying that the three agencies are not coordinating enough. No? We have three education agencies, TESDA, CHED, and DepEd. And these three agencies are not cohesive, coordinating and not cohesive enough that learning outcomes are being affected. I'll give you a case in point, like teacher education. It starts with CHED in pre-service, meaning in college, and then almost 90% of our teachers end up in our public schools, which is DepEd. But CHED and DepEd are not coordinating at all in terms of teacher education. So that's one of the root causes why a lot of our teachers come unprepared when they teach in DepEd, using the previous curriculum, because the previous curriculum are not being taught during the college stage of those teachers. So that is the main focus of the first year report. In so far as your question in where do we start with the basics, reading and math. If we have grade 7, grade 8 students who are being intervened with simple math, that means fundamentals or foundational skills are not being taught at an early stage, and we need to focus on that at an early stage.
Okay, I wanted to hone in on something you said, Senator. Like you said, magkakahiwalay yung tatlong ahensya, yung CHED, yung DepEd, pati yung TESDA, right? But it was EDCOM 1 actually that the findings of EDCOM 1 was to separate these three departments. And can we then say na maybe that was a bad idea to begin with?
No, EDCOM 1 also suggested that there should be a coordinating council, the National Education Coordinating Council. That was never implemented since EDCOM 1. And that's why I thank the President Marcos right now for creating the Cabinet Cluster on Education. This is a suggestion coming from EDCOM 2, based on the findings of EDCOM 1 and also based on the findings that we have conducted in the past year. And one of the fundamental flaws that was not implemented was that coordinating body. And now that coordinating body has been created by President Marcos. And with the recent appointment of Congressman Kiko Benitez in TESDA, I think we will have a good, I'll probably call it the dream team of education has been appointed. Senator Sani Angara is there for DepEd, and then you have Congressman Kiko Benitez there for TESDA. For me, we have the dream team already appointed, and now that team is fused into what we call the Cabinet Cluster for Education. And I think that the problem with coordination will now be solved.
Wow, that's pretty high praise. We're going to expect a lot from your former colleague, now DepEd Secretary Sani Angara. But Senator Gatchalian, your time is precious, we know, but I wanted to shift gears, if that's okay, and talk about another case that you're overseeing. Of course, I'm talking about Alice Guo. I wonder if you could give us an update on what's going on there now and how you're able to push forward the case given that they're not cooperating.
Well, we found out just today that she filed her counter affidavit on her case on human trafficking against her, and I was going through the documents earlier, and apparently it was notarized here in the Philippines. So that means she had to appear personally to the notary public in order for that document to be notarized and subsequently filed to the DOJ. So if indeed that notary public is telling the truth, then she's still here in the Philippines, because you cannot file your notary public by remote. And that's in the rules of the Supreme Court. So we will look at that angle. This is the latest development today. On top of that, the Senate is ready to file this coming week cases against her on perjury as well as disobedience. And the Senate's not taking lightly of her non-appearance in our hearings.
Her attorney, her lawyer, attorney Stephen David, in the few times that we've spoken to him, broadly he feels like they haven't been given a fair shake, right? For instance, he pointed to the fact that yung mga documents that you found, they were never given a copy of. You only divulged it in the public hearings, and they find out through the media. How would you react to that?
Well, that's the whole point of inviting her and personally inviting her and to let her personally come to the Senate for her to defend herself and to dispute those findings. those findings were not only validated by the Senate, but they were validated also by other government agency. A case in point here will be the fingerprints that were used in linking Guo Huaping and Alice Guo. And those fingerprints were validated by no less than the NBI, who is the authority in terms of biometrics and all of this fingerprint validation. So in other words, it's not only the Senate that came out with those evidence. It's also the government agencies that validated those pieces of evidence and used those pieces of evidence to file cases in courts against her.
Are you confident, Senator, that she is here? I mean, I know you mentioned that her notarized document, you saw it. Are you planning to really investigate and talk to that notary public and ask if he personally saw the former mayor of Bamban?
Because you're right, some notary publics, don't require personal appearance.
Well, in the rules of court, you have to appear personally, and you cannot do that remotely. The Supreme Court already revoked the remote appearance or virtual appearance after the pandemic, and the whole point of the notary public is for the notary public to know that you are a real person and you are attesting to your affidavit. So we're investigating this matter also, but that's the initial reaction that I have looking at the counter affidavit that she filed today.
How far do you want to take the case?
Well, as far as putting people in jail because of the crimes that they did to our country, the human trafficking, the shame, the torture, the prostitution, that's how far I want to take this, because those criminal syndicates should be made accountable and put in jail. And we cannot take this lightly, because if this will not if these criminal syndicates will not be prosecuted, then they will just laugh at us and probably repeat the same criminal activities over again.
But Sen, what about from the other side of the fence? I mean, we can say, of course, no, nakalusot sila sa atin di ba? Are you looking at certain pieces of legislations, amendment to existing laws to prevent this from happening again?
Yeah, a lot actually came out of this hearing. Number one is to legislate a ban on POGOs, and we have a few bills already filed in the Senate, and we're going to hear that. Number two is to fix our late registration system and our birth certificate system. As we all know, Guo Huaping became a Filipino because of the late registration system that was already validated. It was spurious and it was irregular. And number three, we have to also look at the Bureau of Immigration processes. Like, for example, improve their biometric system, improve their information gathering system, and use that to connect it with other government agencies, so we have faster validation of data, and we will know exactly who are coming here and who are they and what business are they conducting here.
And then lastly, Senator, I wonder if you had any updates as well on the exodus of the POGOs now that President Marcos has said they are banned. Ano yung updates? Is it on track?
We don't have any document yet. I think the last hearing that we conducted, PAGCOR said that they will be conducting an interagency group to look at all the facets of this POGO closures. For example, on employment, on the effects to, let's say, employment effects to the rental and the leasing situation, meaning property issues as well. They're also going to look at Bureau of Immigration issues. For example, if these workers working in POGOs still have live visas, and if they cancel them, what is the mechanism for the Bureau of Immigration to look for them and eventually track them down? So that's the last feedback that we got from PAGCOR. And but anecdotally, I've been hearing a lot of this POGO bosses and these people connected in POGO already starting to pack their stuff and preparing themselves to go back. to their home country. So anecdotally, but in terms of the real plan, we're still going to require POGO to PAGCOR to submit those plans to us.
Okay, and we will check back in with you at a later date for that. For now, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for taking time out of your precious Friday night to talk to us, Senator Win Gatchalian.
Another quick break for now, but up next, what can we expect from the new 911 emergency service? We'll get it straight from PNP Director for Communications, Colonel Warren Tolito. When the big story returns, stay with us. The PNP held a simulation to test the new emergency hotline over at their command center in Camp Crame. The system is similar to the 911 service in the United States, and the National Police Force is hoping that it will fast-track police response and coordination with other emergency responders. But for now, the system is being utilized in Metro Manila. However, the hotline is able to take in calls from across the country.
Dati mano-mano tayo, mano-mano. Ngayon, because of technology, dahil sa ang bilis ng galaw. So, yun ang importante, yung sistemang galing sa 911. At yun ang binigay sa atin. From tawag, punta rito, tapos binabato kung saan lokasyon, buong Pilipinas po yan. Mabilis po dapat yan. Babalaan ko kayo, ha? Yung mga prank calls, alam namin kung saan kayo galing. Alam namin ang location ninyo. So, please, huwag kayo magpa-prank calls dahil kakasuhan po kayo rito.
To tell us more about this new 911 service, we have with us tonight PNP Director for Communications, Colonel Warren Tolito. Colonel Warren, good evening. Maraming salamat po, no, sa pag-unlock ngayong gabi.
Good evening, ladies. For inviting us also to inform the public on the progress on what we've been doing in the Philippine National Police.
Go ahead, Colonel. Tell us all about this new 911 system. Paano to nagkaiba? Ito yung E911, di ba? Iba daw to dun sa 911 na naitalaga nung, I believe that was 2020.
Ito na rin yun, ma'am, yung emergency 911 revitalized. Bakit naging revitalized ang tawag dito? Because we joined the PNP supported this DILG emergency 911 revitalized by having the portion on police assistance to be based at the national headquarters of the Philippine National Police. Basically, itong mga tawag dito were being received at the National Call Center in Quezon City, but was later on brought to the PNP Command Center. And from there on, we go direct to concerned police station to relay call for assistance of our kababayan. The good thing about this is that it's within the PNP system so that we will be able to follow it up and review and see what's in relation of what's happening in there in relation to the peace and order of a certain locality.
Colonel, how much call traffic do you get on average in a day, and ano yung wait time usually?
For the past 1 week, because we just started that last week, it's around 30 plus calls. Yung una actually started from 23, then slowly went up to 30, and then 40. We are expecting more calls since this came out already with all media outlets. So we'll be expecting more calls from the National Capital Region.
Colonel, I have to ask, no, out of the 30, 40 calls you get, ilan doon ang actual emergencies talaga?
Those are actually the actual emergencies.
Okay.
But if you are going to look at the prank calls, actually it's 98.5% are the prank calls, and 1.45% are the actual calls, legitimate calls. If we are going to translate that, that's around 17,500 calls being received for the past 1 week. And we only have around 250 legitimate calls for this past 1 week.
So for the real emergency calls, what's the response time usually? How quickly do we get to them?
It differs during daytime and nighttime. For nighttime, within the 5-minute response time. But for daytime, it exceeds around 6 to 8%. We got the percentage, it's around 31% yung lumalampas ng 5%.
Okay. What's the, ano yung Colonel yung nagpapabagal?
For the daytime, it's usually the traffic. Especially when the responding vehicle is the patrol vehicle and they were trapped with the traffic, that's when delays comes in. Hindi ganun kataas, it's only around 30% because there are other responders who's been using motorcycles. In fact, we have patrol responders who've been using their own motorcycles just so that they can pass through traffic. And this usually occurs from 8 to 11 o'clock in the morning and around 3 to 5 in the afternoon. That's where the peak calls comes in. But for traffic, it's usually in the morning.
Colonel, ang promise ninyo para ito yung napapanood natin sa TV, no, yung dial or Rescue 911, dial 911. Of course, tayong mga lumaki na napapanood yung show, meron tayong mga expectations, right? Na pag tumawag ako, kunwari kinidnap ako, ganyan, mahanap niyo kung nasan ako even though I don't know where I am. How hard was it, no, to install that system? How long have you been working on this? And ano po yung kakayahan itong sistema na ito?
We've been working that since the assumption of our GPNP. That was started by Police Brigadier General Nick Torre before he was assigned in Region 11. They've been working hard really to start the improved communication network, the communication lines from the national headquarters down to patrollers. And then from the national headquarters to the National Command and Control call center. Yun yung they've been working hard on that in partnership with, of course, with the DILG Emergency 911 Commission and PLDT and the NGA 911. Upon my assumption, we still pursued that, keep on doing the simulation exercise, review the response plan coming from the regions and try to enhance those area and even pursued enhancing the communication system of the Philippine National Police, especially at the ground level. That's where we focus a lot. And from the National Call Center to our PNP Command Center.
Okay. May tanong ako, importante to, Colonel, no? Kahit medyo, I guess, baka matawa yung iba sa tanong ko. Pero pag dial ba ako sa cellphone ko, kailangan ko pa balagyan ng 02 bago mag-911? Sapat na ba yung 911? Landline, cellphone, may pagkakaiba pa? Ba yung pagdadial? May mga nagtatanong din, no? Kung gamit po ang cellphone, kung walang load, makakatawag rin ba sa 911?
That's a very good question, ma'am. Because that's where some of those missed calls were coming from. Just dial 911. No? 911 lang po talaga ang i-dial natin and you can easily call center natin.
So,
If you are going
cellphone,
to-
landline, 911 lang ang idadaya.
Cellphone, landline, diretso po sa 911. In fact, marami kami natatanggap na nag-order ng pizza because there's this company na ang hotline nila is 911-1111. Once na pinindot niyo po yung 911, tapos 1111, diretso na po kagad siya sa 911. Kaya ang sinasabi namin, pinapabalik po namin uli sila, please dial 8 before dialing 911-1111. Ilagay muna yung 8 bago ituloy yung 911-1111.
Hindi nyo naman
Otherwise,
kakasuhan yung mga yun, di ba? Mga innocent mistake naman po yung mga gusto mag-order ng pizza.
Yes, ma'am. Those are innocent mistakes. So, we understand. We keep on studying that and then we realize that we need to dial first digit, the 8 number, before dialing their hotline. But for this particular emergency hotline, just dial 911.
Okay, next question. What
Any
about
communication.
So you don't need to dial 8 for this one, this new E911.
There's no need.
Okay, 911 lang.
Landline, mobile, you can do that.
Okay. Next question, no? Ito, Colonel. Kung yun nga, wala akong load, pag dial ako ng 911, magre-ring pa rin po ba siya? At sino po magbabayad nung tawag na yun? Libre po ba? Nakausap niyo na ba yung telcos natin about this?
Libre actually. That's including the executive order number 56 that this is a free call. Kaya kahit wala kayong load dahil emergency, then you can access yung emergency hotline.
Okay, last na lang, I understand, Colonel, hindi pa kumpleto, hindi pa nationwide yung rollout. Can you clarify that for us? Saan lang pong areas gumagana for now and kailan po to magiging nationwide na talaga?
Dito sa NCR actually yung pilot area natin. That's the thing we started in August 8 last week. But there are some areas na unti-unti pumapasok. But supposedly we've been working hard for the National Capital Region, especially those matters that delays. There's another thing that really delays the response of our responders, and that is finding the exact location. Kaya that's the second phase of what we'll be doing together with NGA 911 and E911 Commission to integrate that in the system so that the caller, upon calling 911, will be identified already with our console. May mapa po sa amin dito, makikita kagad kung anong particular area ang tumatawag sa amin. So that's the next phase of what we are doing. We hope to have that in 2 to 3 months so that it will facilitate the response of our police officers on the ground dahil may accuracy na in determining kung saan yung area na tumatawag.
Okay, so Matic, parang may drop pin agad, no, padala sa mga pulis natin. Maraming salamat po, PNP Director for Communications, Colonel Warren Tolito, for joining us tonight. We'll check back in with you in 2 to 3 months kung kamusta na ang ating E911 system.
Following his busy day at Signal headquarters yesterday, two-time Olympic gold medalist Carlos Yulo this time made his way to TV5 Novaliches. Yulo took center stage as Willie Revillame and the studio audience welcomed him to the show Will to Win. The Golden Boy even received a jacket from Will. Yulo again thanked all of his supporters for praying for him during the Olympics. Prior to his appearance on the show, Yulo also spoke a bit with the media again. And once more, thanked sports patron and PLDT chair Manny V. Pangilinan for his support and assistance during his preparations for Paris 2024.
MVP, maraming salamat po. Grabe yung supporta niya. Siya yung tumulong sa akin makapunta ng Japan din po. And nakapagtayo po ng gym sa Intramuros. And syempre sa One Sport and sa Signal po na in-air po yung mga training camps namin, yung insight ng trainings, and commentating sa mga laro po namin and maipakita sa buong mundo po na yung mga atletang Pilipino, yung mga pinerform namin during Olympics. Really grateful po sa inyong lahat at sa mga Pilipino po na sumusuporta sa amin at nagdarasal.
And if like us, you can't get enough of our golden boy, Carlos Yulo, do catch the long take interview with him. That is coming right after the big story, right after the show, so don't change that channel.
Oh, Olympics hangover much? We're not over.
We're not over it. We're trying to prolong it, but that is a really good one-on-one interview with Cheryl Cosim.
Where he gets candid about everything, his training, his family, his challenges.
Very interesting interview, so do catch that. Don't change that channel. That's it for the big stories tonight. We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night and a great weekend.